Chris, for people like us, and there are many, even if not enough of us, but those of us who engage on this and challenge schools on their work ideologies, there are many ways we do it. You and I both write. We both do some social media, some podcasting. Um, I've been on the ground briefly. I've had in-person interactions with um, headmistresses, heads of diversity, uh, old boys, old heads of old boys committees, etc. You're on the ground to some extent, or have been. Um, I also think that some methods are sometimes feel futile. Um, Arguing on Twitter sometimes feels futile. There is some benefit. It's certainly very frustrating. Tell me a bit about your style, your approach, what you find effective, and what you have perhaps found completely ineffective and just not worth bothering with. Sorry, can
So
I?
I think,
You've gone very hazy again.
um, is this better? Sorry,
Hazy.
I don't know what to. Is there like a mechanism that I can?
I don't know. Further back. Oh, that's probably fine.
Okay, sorry about that.
Let me start again.
Okay.
Right. Right. Chris, you and I have interacted on various platforms, battling school capture. We both write, we do some podcasting, some social media. Oftentimes, I feel it's knocking your head against a brick wall. Sometimes I see real impact. Um, I've been on the ground briefly. I've had meetings with headmistresses and rectors and old boys committees and the like. But I probably don't spend enough time on the ground in person. You've probably had more experience of that. Tell me a little bit about your experience and your style, what you think works and what doesn't, for anyone else who's watching and thinking, what can I do?
I think when you spoke about cowardice being one of the problems, um, and to me that problem needs to be identified first of all, and people need to be honest with headmasters, with boards, with management, that they can see cowardice and that they don't respect that. Um, you know there needs to be more voices within parent bodies, but ultimately it has to, and this is where it's tough in South Africa. Maybe not forever, but there has to be power exercised from high levels. So if you look at Florida, where Ron DeSantis, he knows there's people on the ground who support him, and also he seems like a genuine rational person who can see this is just atrocious. But generally, politicians have to have both. They have to feel like there's a constituency, and they have to be willing to wield that power because they can see the problem. They can see that it's a moral issue. I got huge pushback from the retired bishop's headmaster when I read a piece. I was probably a little bit inaccurate, where I said, the bishop matric class unanimously, which is a bit dodgy. There's bullying there. Wanted safe spaces for LGBTQ people of color in the school. I mean, it's just utterly absurd. And the headmaster at the time, he was on his way out. He said he applauds their commitment to justice. Now, when I wrote about it, I interpreted that as well as an endorsement. Probably I went too strong, but to me, if I'm honest, to all intents and purposes, if you applaud somebody and you one of the most prominent private school headmasters in the country, And that's kind of endorsement. That's tacit endorsement. And you threw anybody behind you who was maybe thinking about taking a stand, you kind of threw them under the bus a little bit. And so people like that need to be criticized, need to be called out. They've put themselves in a prominent position. They've asked for that job, and that comes with being accountable. So you need to do that as parents, as students. I think there will come a time, though, where you need to vote with your feet as well. And I think we need new schools. I think a lot of these schools can't be saved, if I'm honest. I think private schooling, I think it can be saved in South Africa, but I don't think every school can be saved. I think some of just the rot it's so far gone that I don't know if it's going to be worth anybody's energy. Then on the inside for teachers, I mean, something small, where I was teaching, they were going to have a transgender model come in and speak to a group of boys. What is that? And when I asked something, I said, well, why are you doing this? They said, no, the girls' school down the road has done it. And if that's fine with them, it must be fine. Surely it's fine. I'm sure the headmaster there has checked things out. Well, it turned out a few months later that headmaster was being held hostage and was on his way out because he was just letting anything happen to save his job. And so you get this kind of a domino effect amongst these headmasters. But that transgender model didn't actually come to the school. I just took some screenshots of her/his social media, which is appalling. I mean, it was disgusting. And a lot of the people who come in and consult, they're just not willing to look into their backgrounds, where just a cursory glance at it, you can build a lot of momentum just from basically looking at what these people are saying. But it does take quite a lot for people to actually stick their heads out. So you need to keep that up. At school, I mean, when I wrote a piece on Substack, I entitled it, I've spent my life at private South African schools and something has gone very wrong. And I started it off with a set of questions that I literally have asked managers and colleagues over the last decade. Questions like, why is our diversity consultant a transvestite? Do you know that the transgender model invited to speak at our Christian school regularly posts graphic sexual content online? Why does our guest speaker refuse to denounce racial genocide? Is it appropriate that our sex ed trainer for our youngest students is a genderless homeopath? And these are important questions to ask. And I think just for the good of my own soul and conscience as a teacher, you have to do those things. I think when it comes to dealing with the students, I think humor is important. I don't think the stuff, and online as well, a lot of it, it's not susceptible to rationality. It needs to be, and a lot of the true believers, I don't know, something has to happen in their lives for them to see. It's like almost got to be like a religious conversion for a lot of them. But for people who are just unaware, not sure they want to be aware, that use of humor, the use of mocking what is happening, I think is very important. And you don't have to be you don't have to be an absolute rabble rouser, but just a little bit of humor here and there. I think that's very important for parents as well. A lot of these people thrive on humorlessness, like just nothing. There's no satire, there's no irony, there's no tragedy to life. Everything can be made perfect. You're uncomfortable with your body. Well, we can give you a new one. We can turn your penis inside out and make a vagina. And it's just, no, you can't do that. And that's ridiculous. And it's not possible. And that sense of satire, that sense of being aware of the absurdity of it, I think is very important. But on the other hand, and I think when we look, where did this come from? I don't think parents, and maybe you've been aware of this going to these schools, is I don't think a lot of parents realize, a lot of people in society realize that there's a large proportion of teachers who do not like children, who don't like them, who hate them, and don't want what's best for them. And so, people talk about creating safe spaces, caring for it's not true. They're not doing that. It's the will to power. It's throw some incense towards Caesar and maybe you will be made a prefect, the Roman kind of term. That's what it is. And now there is some shift where people start to sense, well, actually, I can probably gain more clout being skeptical of wokeness now, and that shifts as we shift the larger picture. So my point there is that it's not love or care that these people are really into. You know, the kind of woke, the diversity consultants, that it's a lie that they care about these students. And so to genuinely care as a teacher for the students, to without being like squishy and like strangely empathetic, you know, with a weaponized empathy of the woke left, avoid that. But just being a caring person who doesn't hate them, who doesn't see white skin and think, oh, that's suspicious, you know, or somebody who's into sport and thinks, oh, jock, bad jock, or you know, or somebody who's withdrawn socially, and you know, just general care that you knew growing up when a teacher had that care for you. And I think what's also important is just getting rid of this whole white guilt thing. To me, that we you know, that's kind of a little bit vague. How do we do that? I'm not sure, but we've just got to believe it, that we can't feel guilty. We shouldn't make white people feel guilty, and unless you've done something wrong, you don't need to feel guilty. And in actual fact, historically, it's nonsense that white people are some kind of scourge, that whiteness needs to be abolished. It's nonsense. It's like there's no historical basis for it. And what a lot of white schools also, on that note, is you can travel to wealthy schools around the world. And I've done that in the last few years. And you will not find anything approaching the generosity of these white privileged colonial schools. It's nothing comes close around the world for what these schools do for their communities, what these schools do in terms of charity. And it's a pity that it's become so kind of based on resentment and guilt and not genuine charity, a lot of it. And you know, I always used to say, you know, you could probably give the workforce a raise instead of hiring all these people, these white people who are weirdos to come and speak here, these total grifters. But yeah, there's no reason to be ashamed of these places, unless you are ashamed of these specific things where there has been wrongdoing, and you make amends. But this vague sense of guilt it's very unhealthy. It has no historical basis, and you cannot find around the world schools as generous as white South African schools, or majority white, or historically white.
There was lots there. I put down probably too many bullet points, but I'll jump on each of them briefly. I think one point was nuance, and I think you highlight how terribly lacking nuance is. You called yourself out for using the word unanimously when technically it wasn't unanimous, and I think we all need to do more of that. But I think on the woke side, they're particularly bad. We all fall into it sometimes, of painting everyone one way and not being nuanced. But I think our team, if you like, is far better at being nuanced and saying, well, you mentioned whether white people should be guilty. Well, historically, every society has owned slaves. For example, nuance suggests that white people are not uniquely bad. But the people we're opposing seem very much to be arguing white people are uniquely bad. And I'll catch myself there again and say some of the people we're opposing. You mentioned that headmasters sort of collectively, and certainly in my experience, the headmasters and headmistresses and rectors of the elite private schools in South Africa are in a very close network. I've had interactions with one head and actions coming out of various other heads in the days to follow, make it very clear that the head I've spoken to has had a chat on their WhatsApp group or whatever, and there's been a sort of a unified response. They haven't referred to me by name, but they've clearly been responding to me, and I think that's an interesting nugget to keep in mind when engaging with these schools. A big part of what you said was courage. I don't know how we make people courageous, but you and I certainly, and many others, have experienced the backlash when you say something that's obviously true or at least feasible and fair and protected by very basic free speech principles, and you get people coming at you not with reasonable arguments, with nasty arguments, with threats, with in fact racial slurs, with gender slurs. And to an extent, I think you and I, for example, have decided that that's, well, we'll take some of those slings and arrows. It's not nice, but I think far too many private school parents and teachers and the man on the Clapham omnibus is too scared. They don't want to say anything that might have a repercussion in the shape of someone saying, "Oh, you're not very progressive, are you?" You mentioned the consultants, and I'll couple this with another point. You said why a lot, and I think that's the crucial question when a decision is made to bring in a particular consultant or to have the entire curriculum suddenly underpinned by critical race theory. There's no need to go and read Marx and Freire and the like, although that does give you lots of ammunition. You can simply ask why. Why and how? How was this decision come to? When you made this radical decision, for example, to admit a biological boy to a girls' school, why and how? Did you look at case studies to determine it was the best choice for this child, the individual, for the school more generally? Why and how? And very often that comes down to some very boring governance issues. Did you follow reasonable decision-making processes? Were people informed properly? And very often these things collapse in on themselves when you just ask why twice, ask how. And then I think something you touched on near the end was it almost has to become, I think the masses tend to follow the zeitgeist, and I feel similarly with school capture as I do about this, as I do about COVID mania. And I think it has to almost become cool, or the cool thing to self-flagellate in a different way. It almost has to become the honorable thing to self-flagellate for how foolish we were to lock down and coerce people to take this partially tested drug. I hope YouTube doesn't take us down for that. I think it's allowed. But it also almost the zeitgeist has to change, and the zeitgeist has to say, okay, we were wrong about that, and move on. But there's no easy way to achieve that. I think what we're doing, I think certainly in my experience, at a minimum, I'm confident that my efforts have put some very radical woke teachers and other leaders on notice that when they do these things, when they make radical woke policy changes, they're on notice now that someone will call them out. I can't say that's made a massive change, but I think if more of us can make small changes like that, we'll get somewhere. Which leads me to my concluding point. You did touch on this. My take is that some schools are probably too far gone. They can't be saved because too many of the important people of the rank and file are completely compromised. The entire place is captured. And even to attempt to save them probably is futile. I think, however, there is plenty of hope. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing any of this. Many schools can be saved, and there are other solutions. There's a chap on a group where we occasionally interact who has started his own school. So I am very pessimistic about certain pockets, but hopeful in others. How hopeful are you about the prospects of undoing school capture in years to come?
You know, even I said there's some schools which are too far gone, and there are and there will be, but even those schools could somehow have a new chairman, a new head, and once you have that, and you have a bit of courage, anything is possible. A large part of this stuff is personnel, though, as well. People coming through university. You mentioned the social, emotional, all that kind of well-being stuff, which has been a big driver, which is why you get it in England as well. All of this stuff, even without apartheid in the past, that you have these people that's their portfolio, and so they have to find something to do, and you also finding that it's on a very material level. It's very difficult in the old days, you could raise a family on one teacher salary at a good school, and that's not just teaching, that's in pretty much most industries now where that's difficult to do. You don't have a lot of incentives for people who are not like very politically motivated to go into teaching. I mean, not totally. There's still good people, and there's still good people becoming teachers because they like the outdoors lifestyle. They want to kind of do something good. They had a good experience at school, and they want to pass that on. They had a bad experience at school, and they want to do something good with that. So, yeah, there's hope because these schools are hierarchical. If you have a change in leadership, it can be done. And if somebody realizes, like the head realizes, well, I mean, what have I got to lose, really? And that bishop's head telling me, you got no idea what pressure we're under. Yeah, but really, are you really under that much pressure? Like, no one's going to kill you. And if you get fired, these guys, they never without a job. They find another job. That's why they're all mates, because once you reach that level, they will sort you out somewhere else. But then, then there's plenty of hopeful things. The Afrikaans schools in South Africa have been more immune to this. A lot of it is kind of driven in the, it's strange, but a lot of it is like Christian heresy that comes through. So that's why you see it in so many church schools. I don't quite know. That's the problem for a lot of those schools, because that original impulse that founded those schools is now like eaten itself, and how do you refound it without that same faith? You could maybe de-woke it, but it wouldn't be the same thing anymore, just if that's your only aim. So those schools I worry about, but if you have a good head and you're able to find good teachers who are normal family people, who are, not even family people, just people who want to teach, who are not there to create an incubator for young revolutionaries. And that's most people, but unfortunately, it's the people who want to win, not the people who want to be left alone. So you have to motivate them. I think the other thing is, in South Africa, you have impending kind of collapse. And that's actually quite useful, because you're not going to have the FBI coming to a parents' meeting like you do in some American places, because it's just there's going to be crumbling oversight more and more, I think. And that's in those gaps, already these schools, they don't get inspected. Actually, the top private schools like Umalusi, the oversight body, will come in and look around and like, I mean, you're getting good results, off you go. So you don't need to worry about it that much, that kind of oversight. So if you entrepreneurial in the state of chaos, we can create good schools and you can reboot these schools. But like you say, it's got to be made fun to be like this. And we have the advantage because the other side is humorless. They are so utopian. They've got no sense of irony, no sense of satire. They are absolute weird Puritans of some kind, and so we have to push on that advantage that they're not fun people to be around. You tread on eggshells around them, and so we've got to have that sense of endeavor, sense of fun, and that is really kind of like the great virtue of South Africa in the midst of all the horror, is that you in this chaos, there are a lot of people. You want to make a plan, you want to do stuff, and so start new schools, reboot schools, just keep the networks open where people are mocking this, where people are caring as well. That it's that humor and that genuine care that go hand in hand. So I'm relatively hopeful. I mean, I'm not I'm not that hopeful about the world at large, to be honest. Try not to be too black-pilled, but yeah, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter whether the hope is one thing, but what are you going to do? What else are you going to do? You have to keep going. If you've got kids, you've got to find a way to educate them and raise them. If you're a teacher, you got to find a way to live that doesn't make you feel like a sellout. So there's got to be the sense of adventure, no matter whether you think the outcome is not going to be hopeful or achievable. Let's just roll. Let's go.
Yeah, I think you're speaking my language. When I wear another hat, I'm an Austrian school economist, and I tend to think the market is the greatest thing and the most powerful thing around. And markets fix things. Individuals make decisions. Individuals are the ones with motivation, and they unleashed individuals somehow come together to do incredible things, coupled with the fact, as you mentioned, that wokery tends to be so gruesomely unfun.
Yeah.
It's just looks like constant self-flagellation, and flagellation of other people because you catch them using the wrong word. That alone should drive people away. And I think your talk about humor highlights for me the power of strategic trolling. I think trolling gets a bad rap, and it can be bad. It can be wasteful and unpleasant. Increasingly, I think smart strategic trolling, making fun of the bizarreness, and the utter darkness and lack of humor, is a powerful tool in our quiver. But I think that's it, Chris. That was fantastic. I'm sure we'll chat more. Thanks very much for your time. Tell us your Substack for any viewers who'd like to subscribe.
Yeah, please head over to Chris Waldburger. So my name, I'm sure it'll be written down somewhere, unusual name, .substack.com. And yeah, there I kind of every time that I'm on a podcast or interviewed, I'll link to it there. I'm doing some a series for Panda, the COVID response group, who are broadening their purview and their mission, and I'm kind of delving into some of the philosophical aspects of how things have happened over the last 2 years, how the politics and the social side of things and the psychology of it allowed for what just happened to happen. So if you're interested in that, there's a series ongoing there. There's one installment already up. And then, you know, what's really encouraged me, whether I write about schools, whatever I write about, is, and what keeps it going is that you realize there are these people out there who just by knowing there's other people, just by knowing there's some kind of distant camaraderie out there, it really does go a long way. And that I find quite encouraging and moving, that some people just need just need to know that there's someone out there who thinks like them, who has the same sympathies and concerns as them. And to teachers and parents out there, you know, find your way into these little pockets, because you find friendship, you find a sense of mission, and that's what I would leave to people on this topic is you don't need to, you can join in on the kind of on the crusade with a smile on your face and a sword in your hand, metaphorically speaking. We can keep moving forward together. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the woke are few but loud and ruthless.
Yeah.
Lots of people are quietly acquiescent, but there are plenty of people who feel like we do, and the woke are very good at making those people think they're alone. We're not. There are good people in good numbers who are doing good things to oppose school capture and other manias which seem to be increasingly prevalent around the world. Chris, thank you very much. All the way from Kenya, thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. All the best.
Thanks for having me, Ian. Enjoyed it.